The wrench slipped from my grease-stained fingers and clattered onto the concrete garage floor. My phone buzzed against the workbench, and I wiped my hands on an old rag before checking the message. Miley. I'm bringing Eric to your family's Thanksgiving dinner. Deal with it. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I stared at the screen, reading those 12 words over and over until they burned into my retinas. Eric. Her ex-boyfriend. The same Eric who'd been sniffing around our marriage for months, like a dog in heat. Deal with it? I muttered, my voice echoing in the empty garage. Oh, I'll deal with it all right. My name's Tom Mitchell, and I fix computers for a living. Not the most glamorous job in the world, but it pays the bills and keeps me busy. What it doesn't do is prepare you for the moment your wife of 3 years decides to publicly humiliate you in front of your entire family. I set the phone down and tried to focus on the pickup truck's engine, but my hands were shaking. Miley had been acting strange for weeks, staying out late, being secretive with her phone, picking fights over nothing. I'd suspected something was up, but this was a declaration of war. The garage door creaked as I walked to the mini fridge and grabbed a beer. The cold bottle felt good in my palm, but it did nothing to cool the rage building in my chest. Through the small window, I could see Mrs. Larkin watering her garden next door. The 60-something busybody had lived on our street for 20 years and knew everyone's business better than they did themselves. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was a group text between Miley and her best friend, Mel. Miley. Just told Tom about Eric coming to Thanksgiving. You should have seen his face. Mel. OMG, you're so bad. Poor Tom doesn't know what hit him. Miley. He's been taking me for granted. Time to shake things up. The phone slipped from my numb fingers. They were laughing at me, planning my humiliation like it was some kind of game. I'd accidentally been added to their group chat months ago, and they'd never bothered to remove me. Usually, their conversations were boring, complaints about work, gossip about mutual friends. But this was different. I finished the beer in 3 long gulps and grabbed another. The rational part of my brain told me to go inside and have a calm conversation with my wife. The other part, the part that was growing stronger by the minute, wanted to burn everything down. Instead, I called my mom. Tommy? Her voice was warm and familiar. I was just thinking about you. Are you and Miley bringing anything special for Thursday? Actually, Mom, about that. I took a deep breath. I'm not coming. Silence. Then, what do you mean you're not coming? It's Thanksgiving, honey. Miley's bringing her ex-boyfriend as her date. I figured you wouldn't want the drama. She's bringing what now? My mother's voice could have cut glass. Thomas Michael Mitchell, you explain to me right now what's going on. I gave her the short version, the text, the group chat, the months of suspicious behavior. By the end, Mom was so angry I could practically feel the heat through the phone. That little witch, she spat. After everything we've done for her, your father built that deck because she complained about the old one. I spent $200 on that fancy mixer for her birthday. And this is how she repays us? Mom, please don't make a scene. I just wanted you to know why I won't be there. Oh, you'll be there, she said firmly. And so will she. But not with him. I'll make sure of that. After hanging up, I sat in the growing darkness of the garage and planned my next move. Miley wanted to play games? Fine. But she was about to learn that I'd been underestimating myself for far too long. I grabbed my keys and headed for Rick's boxing gym downtown. If I was going to war, I needed to clear my head first. Rick's boxing gym sat between a pawn shop and a Chinese restaurant that had seen better days. The neon sign flickered intermittently, casting red shadows on the cracked sidewalk. Inside, the air was thick with sweat, leather, and the sound of gloves hitting heavy bags. "Tommy," Rick called from behind the front desk. He was a mountain of a man in his 60s, with hands like ham hocks and a voice that had been roughened by 40 years of cigarettes. "Didn't expect to see you tonight. Thought you'd be home with the missus planning your turkey day." "Change of plans," I said, wrapping my hands. "Need to hit something." Rick studied my face with the keen eye of someone who'd seen plenty of men at their breaking point. "Woman trouble?" I nodded and headed for the heavy bag in the corner. For the next hour, I pounded out my frustration on the worn leather, each punch accompanied by a mental image of Eric's smug face. Rick watched from across the room, occasionally calling out technique corrections. "Your form's getting sloppy," he finally said, walking over. "You're punching angry instead of punching smart." "Maybe I want to punch angry." "Anger's fine, kid, but if you're going to use it, you better use it right." He held the bag steady. "What's eating you?" I told him everything. The text, the group chat, the years of feeling like I wasn't good enough for Miley's social media perfect life. Rick listened without interrupting, nodding occasionally. "So, what you gonna do about it?" he asked when I finished. "I don't know. Part of me wants to just let her have him. Maybe they deserve each other." Rick shook his head. "That's quitter talk. You know what your problem is, Tommy? You've been playing defense your whole marriage. Time to go on offense." "What do you mean?" "I mean, stop reacting and start acting. She wants to embarrass you in front of your family, turn the tables, make her the one who looks like a fool." I unwrapped my hands slowly, thinking, I'm not sure I know how to do that. "Then you better learn fast, because from what you're telling me, she's already 3 moves ahead." I left the gym with Rick's words echoing in my head. On the drive home, I made a detour past Miley's office building downtown. Her car wasn't in the parking lot, which wasn't surprising since it was almost 9 o'clock. But Eric's cherry red Camaro was parked in the shadows near the back entrance. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. They weren't even trying to be discreet anymore. I parked across the street and waited. 20 minutes later, Miley and Eric emerged from the building, laughing and touching each other like teenagers. She was wearing the black dress I'd bought her for our anniversary, the one she claimed was too fancy for our dinner date. They stood by Eric's car for several minutes, talking and kissing. I pulled out my phone and started recording. The video quality wasn't great in the dim light, but it was clear enough to see what was happening. As they drove away in separate cars, I sat in the darkness and felt something cold settle in my chest. This wasn't just an affair. This was a calculated campaign to destroy me, and I'd been too blind to see it. Time to change the rules of the game. The next morning, I woke up to an empty bed and the smell of coffee brewing downstairs. Miley was sitting at the kitchen island, scrolling through her phone and eating yogurt. She looked up when I entered, and I saw something new in her eyes, a kind of predatory satisfaction. "Sleep well?" she asked sweetly. "Like a baby." I poured myself coffee and sat across from her. "So, about Thanksgiving." "What about it?" "You really think bringing Eric is a good idea? My family's going to ask questions." Miley shrugged. "Let them ask. Eric and I are friends. There's nothing wrong with bringing a friend to dinner. Friends don't usually make out in parking lots." Her spoon clattered into the yogurt cup. "Excuse me? I saw you last night, outside your office building." I kept my voice calm, conversational. "Interesting friendship you two have." For a moment, I saw panic flicker across her face. Then the mask slipped back into place. "I don't know what you think you saw, but you're being ridiculous." "Am I?" Because from where I was sitting, it looked like you were planning to parade your boyfriend in front of my family and pretend it was innocent. Miley stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the tile floor. "You know what, Tom? Maybe I am seeing Eric. Maybe I'm tired of being married to someone who comes home covered in grease and thinks a night out is going to that disgusting boxing gym. So this is my fault? Everything is your fault." The words exploded out of her. "You're boring, Tom. You're predictable and boring, and I'm sick of pretending to be happy. I nodded slowly. Well, at least now we're being honest. Finally. She grabbed her purse and keys. I'm staying at Mel's tonight. And yes, Eric will be my date on Thursday. Deal with it. After she left, I sat in the quiet kitchen and planned my next move. Miley wanted honesty? She was about to get more than she bargained for. I called my old high school buddy Ben, who worked security at the mall and had a talent for finding information people preferred to keep private. Tommy, long time no talk. What's going on? I need a favor, Ben, and it's probably not entirely legal. My favorite kind. What do you need? I explained the situation, and Ben whistled low. Man, that's rough. But yeah, I can help. Give me Eric's last name and I'll see what I can dig up. Morrison. Eric Morrison. He works at Premier Auto Sales on 5th Street. The used car lot? Oh, this is going to be fun. Those guys are always up to something shady. Give me 24 hours. Next, I called my cousin Jake, who worked for a local towing company. Then I made a few more calls to people who owed me favors, people who knew people who could make things happen without asking too many questions. By the time Miley came home the next evening to pack more clothes, I had a complete dossier on Eric Morrison. The man was a walking disaster. 2 DUIs, a bankruptcy from 5 years ago, and a reputation around town for selling cars with rolled-back odometers. More importantly, he was engaged to a woman named Jessica, who had no idea about his extracurricular activities. Going somewhere? I asked as Miley stuffed clothes into a suitcase. I told you, I'm staying at Mel's until after Thanksgiving. I need space to think. About what? About whether this marriage is worth saving. I almost laughed. She was cheating on me with a criminal and making it sound like I was the problem. Well, when you figure it out, let me know. She paused at the bedroom door. Eric's a good man, Tom. He treats me like I matter. I'm sure he does. Right up until his fiancée finds out about you. Miley's face went white. What fiancé? Jessica Martinez, kindergarten teacher. They've been engaged for 8 months. Didn't he mention her? The suitcase slipped from Miley's fingers and hit the floor with a thud. You're lying. I pulled out my phone and showed her Jessica's Facebook page. There were dozens of photos of her and Eric together, including several recent ones where she was showing off her engagement ring. Bastard, Miley whispered. Yeah, he really is. But hey, I'm sure you're special. I'm sure he'll leave his fiancée for the married woman he's been sneaking around with. Miley grabbed her suitcase and stormed out without another word. I heard her car screech out of the driveway and smiled for the first time in days. Round 1 to me. The next morning was Wednesday, and I had 1 day to execute the rest of my plan. I started by calling in sick to work, something I'd never done without actually being ill. Then I drove to the coffee shop where Miley and her friends liked to meet for their weekly gossip sessions. Mel was there, just as I'd hoped, sitting alone at a corner table with her laptop open. She looked surprised when I approached. Tom, what are you doing here? Shouldn't you be at work? Took the day off. Mind if I sit? She gestured to the empty chair across from her. Mel was one of those women who tried too hard to look younger than her 35 years. Too much makeup, too tight clothes, hair dyed an unnatural shade of blonde. She'd been Miley's friend since college, and I'd never particularly liked her. Miley's pretty upset, she said carefully. I bet she is. Finding out your boyfriend is engaged to someone else will do that. Mel's eyes widened. She told you about Eric? She didn't have to. I'm not blind, Mel. The late nights, the secret phone calls, the way she's been picking fights with me for months. It wasn't exactly subtle. Tom, I want you to know that I told her this was a bad idea. I said she should just ask for a divorce if she was unhappy. But you helped her anyway. I'm her friend. What was I supposed to do? I leaned back in my chair and studied her face. Mel was nervous, fidgeting with her coffee cup and avoiding eye contact. There was something else going on here, something she wasn't telling me. You know what I find interesting, Mel? This whole thing started right after you and David got divorced, almost like you didn't want Miley to be happy if you couldn't be. That's not true, isn't it? You've been in her ear for months, telling her she deserves better, that she's wasting her life with me. Funny how you never mentioned that Eric was engaged. Mel's face flushed red. I didn't know about the fiancé. Sure you didn't. I stood up. Tell Miley I said good luck tomorrow. She's going to need it. From the coffee shop, I drove to Premier Auto Sales. Eric was on the lot, showing a minivan to a young couple with 2 kids. He looked exactly like what he was, a small-time hustler in a cheap suit, all flash and no substance. I parked across the street and called Ben. Please tell me you have good news, I said when he answered. Better than good. Your boy Eric is about to have a very bad day. Remember those rolled-back odometers I mentioned? Well, the state attorney's office has been building a case against Premier Auto for months. They just needed someone to give them a push. What kind of push? The kind where an anonymous tip leads them to check the paperwork on a certain red Camaro that's been sitting on the lot for 3 months with a mysteriously low mileage reading. I smiled. And when might this tip occur? Oh, I'd say right about now. In fact, I'm pretty sure there are some investigators on their way to the lot as we speak. As if on cue, 2 unmarked cars pulled into the Premier Auto parking lot. Men in suits got out and walked purposefully toward the office. I watched Eric's face change from confusion to panic as they flashed their badges. My phone buzzed with a text from Miley. We need to talk. Meet me at Murphy's bar at 6. I texted back, see you there. Murphy's bar was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone else's business, and gossip traveled faster than spilled beer. It was also where Miley and I had had our first date, back when she thought my blue-collar job was authentic instead of embarrassing. I arrived early and grabbed a table in the back corner. The bar was already filling up with the after-work crowd. Construction workers, office employees, and local business owners all mixing together in the democratic way that only alcohol could achieve. Miley walked in at exactly 6 o'clock, looking haggard and defeated. She'd been crying, and her usually perfect makeup was smudged around her eyes. Eric's been arrested, she said without preamble. I heard. Something about fraud, right? Don't pretend you don't know what happened. This has your fingerprints all over it. I took a sip of my beer. I have no idea what you're talking about. Bullshit, Tom. The timing is too convenient. Eric gets arrested the day before Thanksgiving, right after you find out about us? Come on. Maybe the universe has a sense of justice. Miley slammed her hand on the table, drawing stares from nearby patrons. This isn't a game? You're right, I said quietly. It's not a game. Games have rules. This is war, and you fired the first shot. By trying to be happy? By humiliating me, by planning to parade your boyfriend in front of my family like some kind of trophy, by laughing about it with Mel like I was too stupid to figure out what was happening. Miley's face crumpled. I never meant for it to go this far. Yes, you did. You meant for it to go exactly this far. You just didn't expect me to fight back. She was quiet for a long moment, staring into her wine glass. When she looked up, there was something different in her eyes, a hardness I'd never seen before. You want to know the truth, Tom? I've been planning to leave you for months. Eric was just convenient, a way to make the transition easier. By cheating instead of just asking for a divorce? Because I knew you'd make it difficult. You'd want to talk things through, go to counseling, try to fix things. I didn't want to fix things. I wanted out. The honesty was brutal, but also liberating. For the first time in months, I knew exactly where I stood. Well, congratulations, I said. You're out. I'll have divorce papers drawn up next week. Just like that? Just like that. But Miley? Tomorrow is still happening. You made this mess, and now you get to explain it to my family yourself." I left her sitting alone at the table and walked out into the cold November night. Tomorrow was Thanksgiving, and I had one more surprise to prepare. Thanksgiving morning dawned gray and cold, with the promise of snow in the heavy clouds hanging over our suburban neighborhood. I woke up early and made coffee, then sat in my kitchen reading the local news on my phone. There was a small article about the arrests at Premier Auto Sales, mentioning Eric Morrison by name. Perfect. I'd spent the previous evening making final preparations, phone calls to family members, a few strategic social media posts, and one last conversation with Ben to make sure everything was in place. At 10 o'clock, I loaded a cooler with beer and drove to my parents' house across town. The two-story colonial was already bustling with activity, my mom in the kitchen, my dad watching football, my sister and her husband setting up tables in the dining room. "Tommy!" Mom rushed over to hug me. "I'm so glad you decided to come after all." "Wouldn't miss it," I said, kissing her cheek. "Where do you want me to put this?" "Just set it on the counter. Your father's been asking about you all morning." I found Dad in his recliner, beer in hand, watching the Lions lose to the Bears. "Hey, Pop. There's my boy. Heard you've been having some trouble at home." "Nothing I can't handle." He nodded approvingly. "Your mother filled me in on the situation. That wife of yours has some nerve, I'll give her that. She'll be here around 2. "With or without Eric? I'm not sure." "Oh, she'll be here," Mom called from the kitchen. "I made that very clear when I called her this morning." I spent the next few hours helping with dinner preparations and catching up with family members as they arrived. My sister Jennifer pulled me aside around noon. "Mom told me what's going on," she said. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine, Jen. Better than fine, actually." "You seem different. Calmer." "I feel like I've been sleepwalking for the past few years. Now I'm finally awake." At exactly 2 o'clock, Miley's car pulled into the driveway. She was alone. I watched from the living room window as she sat in her car for several minutes, gathering courage. When she finally walked to the front door, her face was a mask of forced composure. Mom answered the door with a smile that could have frozen hell. "Miley, how lovely to see you. Please come in." The temperature in the room dropped about 20 degrees as Miley entered. Conversation stopped mid-sentence, and all eyes turned to her. She was wearing a conservative blue dress and minimal makeup, trying to project innocence and respectability. "Where's your friend?" Mom asked sweetly. "He couldn't make it," Miley replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "Oh, that's too bad. I was so looking forward to meeting him." I walked over and kissed Miley's cheek, playing the dutiful husband. "Glad you could make it, honey." Dinner was a masterpiece of passive-aggressive tension. Mom seated Miley between my elderly Aunt Ruth, who was half-deaf and prone to asking inappropriate questions at top volume, and my cousin Mike, who worked for the sheriff's department and had strong opinions about law and order. "So, Miley," Aunt Ruth shouted, "Helen tells me you've been having marital problems." The entire table went silent. Miley's fork clattered against her plate. "We're working through some things," she managed. "That's what my Harold said before he ran off with that floozy from the diner. Course, that was 1987. Different times." Mike leaned over. "Speaking of floozy behavior, did you see that article in the paper about those car dealers getting arrested? Premier Auto Sales. I know that place, bunch of crooks." Miley's face went pale. "I don't really follow local news." "Oh, you should? One of the guys they arrested was Eric Morrison. Name sounds familiar for some reason." I watched Miley squirm and felt a deep satisfaction. But this was just the appetizer. The main course was still coming. After dinner, as the family gathered in the living room for coffee and pie, I stood up and cleared my throat. "I'd like to say something, if that's okay." The room quieted, and all eyes turned to me. Miley looked like she wanted to disappear into the couch cushions. "First, I want to thank Mom and Dad for hosting another wonderful Thanksgiving. Family means everything to me, and I'm grateful to be surrounded by people who love and support each other unconditionally. Murmurs of agreement around the room. I also want to address something that's been weighing on my mind. Some of you may have heard that Miley and I are going through a difficult time in our marriage. Miley shot me a warning look, but I continued. The truth is, Miley has been having an affair with a man named Eric Morrison, the same Eric Morrison who was arrested yesterday for fraud. She planned to bring him here today, to this family gathering, and introduce him as her friend. The room exploded. Gasps, angry mutters, and Aunt Ruth shouting, "I knew it!" at the top of her lungs. Miley stood up, her face burning red. "Tom, stop it." "Stop what? Telling the truth? You wanted to make a public statement about our marriage, Miley. Well, here's mine." I pulled out my phone and opened the group chat screenshots I'd saved. These are text messages between Miley and her friend Mel, discussing how much fun it would be to humiliate me in front of all of you. Direct quote, "Poor Tom doesn't know what hit him." I passed the phone around the room. The reactions ranged from disgust to outright anger. My mother looked like she was ready to commit murder. "Miley Elizabeth," Mom said in a voice that could have cut steel, "you have exactly 30 seconds to explain yourself before I throw you out of my house." Miley looked around the room at the faces of people who had welcomed her as family, people who had celebrated her birthday and anniversary, people who had genuinely cared about her. The weight of their disappointment and anger was crushing. I can't do this," she whispered, and ran for the door. I followed her outside, where she was fumbling with her car keys, tears streaming down her face. "Feel better now?" she sobbed. "Did you get the revenge you wanted?" "I didn't want revenge, Miley. I wanted honesty. You've been lying to me, to my family, to yourself for months. Today was just the first time someone called you on it. You destroyed me in there." "No, you destroyed yourself. I just refused to help you cover it up anymore." She got in her car and drove away, leaving me standing in my parents' driveway as the first snowflakes of winter began to fall. When I went back inside, the family was buzzing with conversation. Mom hugged me tightly. "I'm proud of you, son. That took courage." "It took too long," I replied. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of supportive family members, leftover turkey, and football games. As I was getting ready to leave around 9 o'clock, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This isn't over. You ruined everything." I showed the message to Mike, who frowned. "That sounds like a threat. You want me to file a report?" "Not yet, but keep it in mind." I drove home through the empty streets, feeling lighter than I had in months. The house was dark and quiet. Miley had apparently come by to collect more of her things while I was at dinner. Her wedding ring was sitting on the kitchen counter next to a note. "Tom, I'm staying with Mel indefinitely. My lawyer will contact you about the divorce. I'm sorry it ended this way. Miley." I picked up the ring and held it up to the light. 3 years of marriage, reduced to a small circle of gold and a hastily scrawled note. I dropped it in the junk drawer and went to bed. The next few days passed quietly. I went back to work, where my co-workers treated me with the careful sympathy reserved for the recently bereaved. Word had gotten around about the divorce, small towns being what they are, and everyone had an opinion about Miley's behavior. Friday evening, I was at Rick's gym working off stress when Ben called. "You need to get down to Murphy's bar right now," he said without preamble. "Why? What's happening?" "Miley's there with Mel and some other people. They're drunk and talking loud about you. It's getting ugly." I sighed. Let them talk. I don't care anymore. "Tom, they're not just talking. Mel's been showing people some kind of video on her phone. Claims it's you doing something you shouldn't be doing." My blood ran cold. "What kind of video?" "I couldn't see it clearly, but she's telling people you've been stalking Miley. Says she has proof." I was already grabbing my keys. "I'll be there in 10 minutes. Murphy's was packed with the usual Friday night crowd when I arrived. I spotted Miley and Mel immediately. They were holding court at a large table near the bar, surrounded by several people I recognized from around town. Miley looked terrible, like she hadn't slept in days. I made my way through the crowd, catching fragments of conversation as I approached. Completely unstable, Mel was saying, following her around town. Never trusted him, someone else added. Always seemed like the type. I stopped at the edge of their table. The conversation died immediately. Ladies, I said calmly. Gentlemen, I understand there's been some discussion about me tonight. Mel looked up with undisguised hatred. We have nothing to say to you, Tom. That's funny because I have plenty to say to you. I looked around the table at the assembled faces. I'm curious, Mel. What exactly have you been telling these people? The truth, that you've been stalking and harassing Miley since she left you. Is that so? And you have evidence of this stalking? I have video of you following her car, taking pictures of her apartment, sitting outside her work. I nodded thoughtfully. That's interesting, because I have video too. I pulled out my phone and opened the recording I'd made outside Miley's office building the week before, the one showing her and Eric kissing by his car. This is from last Wednesday night, I announced loudly enough for half the bar to hear. Miley and her boyfriend Eric Morrison, you know, the guy who got arrested for fraud, having a romantic moment outside her office. I held the phone up so everyone could see. The reaction was immediate. Gasps, mutters, and several people shaking their heads in disgust. That's private, Miley protested. So is marriage, I replied. But you didn't seem too concerned about privacy when you were planning to parade him in front of my family. You had no right. I had every right. You're my wife, Miley. Or were, until you decided to throw that away for a criminal. Mel stood up unsteadily, clearly drunk. You self-righteous bastard. You think you're so perfect, but I know the truth about you. What truth is that, Mel? I know why Miley really left you. I know what you did to her. The bar had gone quiet around us. Even the bartender had stopped wiping glasses to listen. Please, I said, enlighten us all. You hit her, Mel said triumphantly. Miley told me all about it. The bruises, the threats, the way you controlled every aspect of her life. The accusation hung in the air like a toxic cloud. I felt the crowd's mood shift, saw the doubt creep into people's faces. This was Mel's nuclear option, the lie that could destroy everything, but I was ready for it. That's a very serious accusation, Mel, I said calmly. I assume you have proof of these alleged assaults? Miley's word is proof enough. I turned to Miley, who was staring at the table and refusing to meet my eyes. Is that what you're claiming, Miley? That I physically abused you? I never said that exactly. Yes, you did, Mel insisted. You told me he pushed you down the stairs last month. You showed me the bruises. I pulled out my phone again and opened the photo gallery. You mean these bruises? The photos showed Miley at Mel's birthday party 3 weeks ago, laughing and dancing in a short dress that clearly revealed her arms and legs. No bruises anywhere. Or maybe you mean these bruises. I swiped to another photo, this one from Miley's own social media account, posted 2 days after the alleged stair incident. She was wearing a bikini at the community pool, smiling and posing without a mark on her body. The crowd was murmuring now, and not in Mel's favor. I could see the doubt spreading across their faces as they realized what they were witnessing. The truth is, I continued, my voice carrying across the now silent bar, I never laid a hand on my wife. Not in anger, not in violence, not ever. But Mel here has been poisoning Miley against me for months, filling her head with lies and encouraging her to have an affair. I turned to face Mel directly. You want to know why, folks? Because Mel couldn't stand to see Miley happy when her own marriage was falling apart. Misery loves company, and Mel needed a companion for her journey to rock bottom. That's not true, Mel shouted. Isn't it? When did you first suggest that Miley deserved better than me, Mel? Was it before or after David filed for divorce? When did you introduce her to Eric? Before or after you found out your husband was leaving you for his secretary? Mel's face went white. Around the table, her supporters were beginning to look uncomfortable. You destroyed your own marriage with your bitterness and jealousy, I continued. And when that wasn't enough, you decided to destroy mine too. Stop it, Miley whispered. No, I won't stop it. Because I'm tired of being the villain in your story, Miley. I'm tired of being blamed for your choices, your lies, your affair. I'm tired of pretending that any of this is my fault. I looked around the bar at all the faces watching this domestic drama unfold. Some looked uncomfortable, others fascinated. All of them would be talking about this for weeks. Here's the truth, I said loudly. My wife had an affair with a criminal. She planned to humiliate me in front of my family. She lied to everyone about our marriage, and when that wasn't enough, her friend here tried to destroy my reputation with false accusations of domestic violence. I put my phone away and straightened my jacket. But you know what? I'm done. Miley, you want a divorce? You've got it. Mel, you want to spread lies about me? Go ahead. This town is small enough that the truth will come out eventually. I turned to leave, then stopped and looked back at Miley one more time. I loved you, I said quietly. I would have done anything for you. All you had to do was tell me you were unhappy. We could have worked it out or ended things amicably. But instead, you chose to burn everything down and then blame me for the fire. Miley was crying now, her carefully constructed facade finally cracking. Tom, please. Goodbye, Miley. I walked out of Murphy's bar and into the cold November night, leaving behind 3 years of marriage and the wreckage of what had once been love. Behind me, I could hear the buzz of conversation starting up again, but I didn't look back. My phone was already ringing as I reached my car. Rick's gravelly voice filled the silence. Heard there was some excitement at Murphy's tonight. News travels fast. It does when you make a speech like that in front of half the town. You okay, kid? I thought about it for a moment. Yeah, Rick, I think I am. Good, because tomorrow's a new day, and you've got a life to rebuild. He was right. As I drove home through the empty streets, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Hope. The marriage was over, the lies were exposed, and for the first time in years, I was free to be myself again. Miley could keep her secrets and her bitterness. Mel could keep her jealousy and her schemes. I had something better, the truth and the strength to start over. Der Band for Epilogue. New beginnings. 6 months later, I was sitting in my lawyer's office signing the final divorce papers. Miley had agreed to an uncontested divorce after the scene at Murphy's bar effectively ended any sympathy she might have had in town. Mel had moved away shortly after, claiming she needed a fresh start somewhere else. That's it, my lawyer said, sliding the papers into a folder. You're officially a free man, Tom. I walked out into the spring sunshine feeling lighter than I had in years. My phone buzzed with a text from Rick. Gym tonight? Got a new heavy bag that needs breaking in. I texted back, wouldn't miss it. As I drove home, I thought about the past 6 months. The divorce had been messy but quick. Miley had tried to claim half of everything, but her affair and the public nature of her lies had worked against her. She'd moved to another state, and according to mutual acquaintances, was working as a receptionist and living in a studio apartment. Eric Morrison had been sentenced to 2 years in prison for fraud. His engagement to Jessica had ended, obviously, and Premier Auto Sales had closed down. Sometimes karma didn't need any help. I'd thrown myself into work and had gotten a promotion to senior technician. The pay raise was nice, but more importantly, I enjoyed going to work again. I'd also started taking night classes in computer programming, thinking about maybe starting my own business someday. The house felt different now, lighter, more peaceful. I'd redecorated, getting rid of anything that reminded me of Miley and her need for Instagram-perfect aesthetics. The place actually felt like home again. My family had been incredibly supportive throughout the whole ordeal. Mom still brought up Miley occasionally, usually to express her continued outrage at the betrayal, but mostly they'd all moved on. At Easter dinner, my sister had asked if I was dating anyone yet. Not yet, I'd told her, but I'm open to possibilities. And I was. For the first time in years, I was genuinely excited about the future. I'd learned some hard lessons about trust, about standing up for myself, about not letting other people define my worth. Most importantly, I'd learned that sometimes the best revenge is simply living well. My phone rang as I pulled into my driveway. It was Ben. "Hey, Tom, you'll never guess who I saw at the grocery store yesterday." "Who?" "Mel. She's back in town, working at that new coffee place downtown. Looked like she'd been through the ringer." "Good for her," I said, and meant it. I felt no anger toward Mel anymore, just pity. She'd destroyed her own life and tried to take others down with her, and now she was facing the consequences. "You're a better man than me," Ben said. "I'd still be holding a grudge." "Grudges are heavy, Ben. I've got better things to carry." That evening at the gym, Rick introduced me to a new member, a woman about my age who worked as a nurse at the local hospital. Her name was Lisa, and she had kind eyes and a genuine smile. "Lisa's looking for someone to show her the basics," Rick said with a not-so-subtle wink. "You mind giving her a few pointers?" I looked at Lisa, who was clearly embarrassed by Rick's matchmaking attempt, but game enough to go along with it. "I'd be happy to help," I said. Fair warning, though, Rick's idea of basics might be a little intense for most people. She laughed. "I work in the ER. I think I can handle intense." As we worked through some basic combinations on the heavy bag, I found myself genuinely enjoying her company. She was smart, funny, and refreshingly honest about what she wanted out of life. When I offered to buy her coffee after the workout, she accepted. "So," she said, as we sat in a quiet corner of the diner across from the gym, "Rick tells me you're recently divorced." "Very recently. Like, this morning recently." "Ouch! Bad timing on my part?" I thought about it. "Actually, I think your timing might be perfect." We talked until the diner closed, about everything and nothing. She told me about her work, her family, her dreams of traveling someday. I told her about my business plans, my love of fixing things, my newfound appreciation for honesty in relationships. "Can I ask what happened?" she said as we walked to our cars. "With your marriage, I mean. You don't have to answer if it's too personal." "She cheated," I said simply. "And when I found out, instead of trying to work things out, she decided to make it my fault." Lisa nodded. "I'm sorry. That must have been awful." It was. But it also taught me a lot about myself, about what I will and won't accept in my life. And what won't you accept? Lies, manipulation, people who try to make me feel small so they can feel big. I opened her car door for her. "What about you? What won't you accept?" "Cowardice," she said without hesitation. "I've dated too many men who were afraid to be honest about what they wanted. Life's too short for games." I liked her answer. I liked her. "Would you maybe like to have dinner sometime?" I asked. "Somewhere with actual tablecloths and menus that don't have pictures on them?" "I'd like that very much." As I drove home that night, I thought about the journey that had brought me to this point. A year ago, I'd been trapped in a marriage built on lies, too afraid of confrontation to stand up for myself. Tonight, I was a free man with a promising future and the beginnings of what might be a real relationship with someone who valued honesty as much as I did. Miley had wanted to break me, to reduce me to nothing so she could feel justified in her choices. Instead, she'd freed me from a life that was slowly suffocating my soul. Mel had wanted to destroy my reputation and isolate me from my community. Instead, she'd forced me to find my voice and use it. Sometimes the best revenge really is living well. And for the first time in years, I was truly living.